Hi, good evening, everyone. So, I hope all of you had the time to go through the lecture notes of yesterday and have thoroughly revised the topic of demand. Okay. But आज we will go ahead and we'll begin with the topic of utility. Okay. Just give me a minute. So we'll begin with the topic of utility. Okay. अब I'll wrap up ये utility and choice वाला topic in 2 days. Today we will do what is consumer equilibrium, what is budget line, on all those things, huh? Single commodity consumer equilibrium and two commodity consumer equilibrium and cardinal and ordinal utility. And in the next lecture हम different type of indifference curve और उनमें कैसे equilibrium आता है, how we find equilibrium for different kind of indifference curve, we'll find that. Yes, it already got uploaded yesterday, na? Similarly, it will be done today. Okay. तो सबसे पहले we should know the difference between beta wants and needs. Want हमेशा unlimited होती हैं, हाँ. Want तो I can want something very difficult to achieve. तो wants are unlimited. But फ्रॉम वांट्स वी वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड कि कौन सी वो वांट्स हैं जो नेसेसरी वांट्स हैं, कौन सी वो वांट्स हैं जो जिनके बिना वी कैन नॉट लिव, राइट, विच आर दोज वांट्स विच आर नेसेसिटीज, राइट, विच आर माय नीड्स. एंड we always want to go ahead and we always want to satisfy those needs first. We want to ensure कि हमारा जो भी income है we are able to buy the needs. ठीक है, of course as income increases what you need can increase and your wants can increase, but want is always unlimited. Now, what is utility? Utility is the want satisfying power of the commodity in very simple language, right? माने utility is the satisfaction we get from the commodity. जब हम कोई भी commodity consume करते हैं, so it makes us happy, right? That happiness we get from the commodity. Or sometimes it can make us sad also. So in Delhi, you go out, इतना बुरा air quality है that it can make you sad. So instead of getting positive utility, you're getting negative utility. So the satisfaction you get, whether negative or positive, from any commodity, वही utility है, right? Now, beta, because we are talking about exams like CUET, UGC NET, ऐसे exams में, a lot of times you may be asked match the following, या who gave what, authors of the book, है ना, ये सब बहुत often आता है. You may be given certain statements and asked who gave which statement, right? Or they may say utility is the quality of a good to satisfy want, right? Who gave this statement? So I have given you some important statements here कि किसने क्या दिया था. You can just remember them. इनको एक बारी अच्छे से पढ़ लेना कि what this is all about. ठीक है. अच्छा, similarly it is very important that you know which year what happened. ठीक है. So for example, when we go ahead and when we talk about the concept of utility, right, is there ethics in utility? Well, no, economics does not talk about that, but that is exactly where we talk about things like externalities, right? So, no, there are no ethics involved. I mean, for a criminal, he may get utility from shooting a person. Does not mean it's the right thing, but he still gets a positive satisfaction. ठीक? Okay. So coming back to this, तो जब हम कोई भी concept की बात करते हैं, right? Whether we talk about utility or demand, one thing which you have to do, all of you have to do is the chronology of demand or chronology of utility. माने who gave what when, वो आपको ध्यान से करना होगा. So I am just mentioning the chronology of utility. You guys can add on to that chronology. ठीक है. So first of all, Adam Smith. in 1776 talked about the paradox of value. ठीक है, माने उन्होंने बोला कि दो चीजें होती हैं, एक होती है वैल्यू इन यूज एंड दूसरा हो जाता है वैल्यू इन एक्सचेंज. वैल्यू इन यूज मीन्स समथिंग विच गिव्स यू यूजफुलनेस. ठीक है, वैल्यू इन एक्सचेंज मीन्स प्राइस ऑफ द कमोडिटी, माने मार्केट वैल्यू. ठीक है, सो यूटिलिटी इज वैल्यू इन यूज, माने सेटिस्फैक्शन, कितना कोई चीज यूजफुल है मेरे लिए. जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल वाटर में हैव अ लो प्राइस, राइट, सो इट्स वैल्यू इन एक्सचेंज इज लो, बट वाटर के बिना वी कैन नॉट सर्वाइव, सो इट्स वैल्यू इन यूज इज हाई, right? So from here only, we can distinguish between the value of water and value of diamond. And I hope all of you know the water diamond paradox, हाँ, जिसमें हम बोलते हैं why necessities like water they have a low price while luxuries have a high price. तो ये पहला चीज हो गया where we go ahead and we talk about Adam Smith. ठीक है, the second thing that post which we kind of started talking about utility, it basically happened by David Ricardo and Mill. So Ricardo, आई होप यू नो कि ये सारे हम क्लासिकल इकोनॉमिस्ट की बात कर रहे हैं, यूजुअली मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक्स में यूज होते हैं, बट आई एम जस्ट टेलिंग यू इनका कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन इन माइक्रो. सो रिकार्डो 1817, in on tips it should be in your mind. These are the things which are very very important from exam point of view, एकदम दिमाग में होना चाहिए क्या कब आया. So Ricardo and Mill 1848. Now although they mainly focused on the side of labor and cost of production and labor theory, but उन्होंने भी एक वर्ड यूज कर लिया, लेबर थ्योरी ऑफ वैल्यू, माने इन अ वे दे ऑल्सो टॉक्ड अबाउट हाउ मच यूटिलिटी वॉज गेटिंग डिराइव्ड फ्रॉम लेबर, है ना, क्योंकि उन्होंने बोल दिया लेबर थ्योरी ऑफ वैल्यू. सो वी आर ऑल्सो टॉकिंग अबाउट लेबर से क्या यूटिलिटी एक्सट्रैक्ट हो रही है, क्या सेटिस्फैक्शन एक्सट्रैक्ट हो रही है, क्या वैल्यू एक्सट्रैक्ट हो पा रही है. देन वी हैड अ कंप्लीट रेवोल्यूशन, एक पूरा रेवोल्यूशन आया इकोनॉमिक्स में, एंड उस रेवोल्यूशन को वी नेम्ड दैट एज मार्जिनल रेवोल्यूशन. मार्जिनल रेवोल्यूशन, मार्जिनल रेवोल्यूशन 1870s के अराउंड इट स्टार्टेड, एंड दिस वॉज द रियल बिगनिंग, मतलब जैसे वो मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी, मार्जिनल कॉन्सेप्ट यूज होना शुरू हुआ. सो दिस वॉज द टाइम व्हेन वी स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग अबाउट मोर अबाउट यूटिलिटी. ठीक है, जिसमें वी हैड सर्टेन इंपॉर्टेंट नेम्स. द फर्स्ट वन वॉज जेवंस 1871 यूके. ठीक है, इनको बोलते हैं विलियम स्टेनली जेवंस, एंड ही इंट्रोड्यूस्ड द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ यूटिलिटी. ठीक है, बट ही वॉज वेरी फोकस्ड ऑन सब्जेक्टिव सेटिस्फैक्शन. ठीक है, माने ही emphasized more of the satisfaction in terms of, so he said subjective satisfaction is measurable, measure तो कर सकते हैं, but he kept talking about satisfaction depending on the final degree of utility. उन्होंने total utility के बारे में कुछ नहीं बोला कि there is a concept of total satisfaction, then there is a concept of additional satisfaction. इतना डिटेल में he didn't say. He just said कि what, we get some satisfaction from a commodity, or maybe that commodity is, the satisfaction is measurable. ठीक है, उतना करके he left. Then we had Karl Menger. Karl Menger again 1871, but in Austria. He was the founder of Austrian school, and उन्होंने बोला कि goods drive value from marginal utility in satisfying human wants. तो उन्होंने भी marginal utility पे he focused on that, but he focused on individual preferences. माने there is no concept of society preferences, वो सब बहुत later concepts हैं. He just said that we are focusing on preferences that you derive from individual commodity as individual. So how much satisfaction I derive from a rubber band, from individual commodity, right? Then when walrus came into picture, right, that was 1874, right? That was in France, Switzerland. Huh? So that is when he integrated the concept of utility into a general framework. तो आपको सबको पता ही होगा, we all know there is something called as Walrasian equilibrium. ठीक है? So Walrasian equilibrium means general equilibrium. माने जहां पे हम we make those Edgeworth box and we find out when we have two commodity case कैसे होगा. So we moved ahead from individual preferences towards a general equilibrium concept. General equilibrium की तरफ हमने start किया चलना. Now all of this we were saying many things. बहुत कुछ हम यहाँ पे बोल तो रहे थे, but we were not putting them down in any book. ठीक है. So the first time that someone plugged these things into, integrated the concept of utility into general equilibrium, if you're asking for this, he brought the utility of individual into general equilibrium framework. ठीक है. अच्छा, अब क्या हुआ ना कि माने जेविन्स स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग वे बैक. जेविन्स बात कर रहे थे, मेंगर बात कर रहे थे, बट we could not see these things written in publications, in books. It was only Marshall in 1890 that he finally brought the concept of cardinal utility in his book Principles of Economics. राइट. तो अब उन्होंने ये सब यूज किया, लॉ ऑफ डिमिनिशिंग मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी, कंज्यूमर सरप्लस, यूटिलिटी फंक्शन. हाँ, तो मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी ऑफ मनी, MUM. सो नो डाउट मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी, यूटिलिटी, कार्डिनल यूटिलिटी, ये सब टर्म्स फ्लोट कर रही थी. दे वर फ्लोटिंग अराउंड इन 1870s, but they were formalized into a concept in 1890 by Marshall. The concept of diminishing marginal utility came into picture by Marshall. ठीक है. So sometimes what will happen is कि आपको match the following दिया जाएगा. You'll be given match the following. अब in some questions match the following में you will be given Jevons. Sometimes you will be given Menger. Sometimes you will be given Marshall. I know many of you will come to me. So जैसे for example in the question bank match the following. Suppose you are given Jevons, Walrus, Smith, Ricardo, and you are given options. और यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है cardinal utility या marginal utility, general equilibrium, value of surplus. You're given some options. Ab, you will say, ma'am, why have you marked cardinal utility with Jevons? वो तो मार्शल ने दिया था. You know it is wrong, ma'am. I last to last year, every year I see the same thing. So no, Jevons is also correct. Right? अगर Jevons की जगह option I would have been given Menger, then also it is correct. If I would have been given Marshall, then also it is correct. They are all part of marginalized revolution, right? Two will never be given to you. ऐसा नहीं होगा कि they'll give you Marshall also and Jevons also. उतना confusing they will never give you, right? They will give you only one of these 2-3 names. But हाँ, you may be asked chronologically. ठीक है. जैसे they may ask you कि put them in order and they may give you Jevons, Marshall, Walrus, right? And they may give you Higgs and Allen. ठीक है, 4-5 उन्होंने दे दी. They may give you Pareto. And they may ask you that put them in chronological order of giving utility. Utility के chronological order में इनको arrange करो. We understand all of them talked about generally about utility, but इनको you have to put them from early to the most recent one. तो ठीक है. Then we understand, J1 should be followed by Walrus, should be followed by Marshall, should be followed by Pareto. So that ways you have to remember which gave which year. ठीक है. Pareto I have to explain, don't worry. हाँ. तो yes. So I already have recorded that who gave what in which year. 100 economist ka it should be there on your portal Indian economy ke section mein, so you can look from there. But I also want you to do it topic wise. ठीक है. तो आप if you're studying just consumer today, just utility, उसका अलग से you just make a note of it. So then came this Marshall, and this happened. अब ये तो हो गया. All of these economists till now, they were more of the cardinal utility economist. Cardinal means they said utility is measurable. ठीक है. Then came the ordinal utility revolution to say. ठीक है. And इसमें we had the coming up of Pareto in 1906. ठीक है. उन्होंने बोला utility is not something which is measurable. He introduced the concept of ordinal utility. He introduced the concept of ranking the preferences. उसी टाइम पे during another 5-7 years Slutsky came into picture. In 1915 स्लट्सकी आए और उन्होंने बोला कि जो भी हमारा चेंज इन डिमांड हो रहा है उसको वी कैन डिकम्पोज इट इन सब्स्टिट्यूशन इफेक्ट एंड इनकम इफेक्ट, एंड वी कैन कॉल दिस टोटल एज प्राइस इफेक्ट. राइट. देन this happened way back 1906, 1915. Then again we had to put these things in a book. We had to formalize them. So then came Hicks and Allen. Very important year, very important economist. किसी ना किसी जगह you will find their name in the exam. Hicks and Allen. They developed modern indifference curve analysis in a book that they wrote, A Reconsideration to the Theory of Value. ठीक है. इसमें इन्होंने they introduced ordinal concept formally. They introduced substitution income effect formally. They introduced the concept of ranking bundle formally. माने अभी तक भी people were doing it. सब बत बोल रहे थे, right? They were talking about indifference curve, about ordinal utility. ये सब हो रहा था, right? Slutsky was the one who introduced it, definitely. But who formalized these things? Who wrote them in some place for us to read? It was Hicks and Allen in 1934. Okay, good. I hope that this is clear. ठीक है. This happened. ठीक है. ये जो three economists हैं, they introduced the ordinal revolution. माने we should be ranking the bundles. Now after this, consumer theory खत्म नहीं हुआ है, हाँ. Then we saw the coming up of revealed preference. ठीक है. Revealed preference is majorly मतलब majorly gifted to us by Paul Samuelson. Please beta, you have to remember them by heart. एकदम टिप्स पे होना चाहिए ये पूरा chronology. So by Paul Samuelson in 1938, he proposed revealed preference theory. And उन्होंने ये बात की कि utility can be inferred. माने आप मुझे बता दो कि bundle X is preferred over Y, तो इसका क्या meaning है? How do revealed preferences work? That first time it came by Paul Samuelson. ठीक है. There was another economist, rarely You would have seen his name. I'm not sure. Hendrik. Let me write in a better handwriting. Hothacker. Houthakker. 1950. He talked about axioms in revealed preference. ठीक है, देखिए when so if you look into the first two pages of variant, वहां पे हम बात करते हैं कि कब preferences consistent हैं. So those axioms कि when preferences will be consistent, right? When do I think that revealed preference is working in right direction? Those axioms were provided by Hendrik. ठीक है. So this is your revealed preference theory. इसके बाद came the modern utility concepts. ठीक है, मॉडर्न यूटिलिटी में एक तो हमारे पास होगा एक्सपेक्टेड यूटिलिटी कॉन्सेप्ट, जो हम रिस्क के चैप्टर में पढ़ते हैं, राइट. 1944, given by anyone would like to tell? We write that as VNM utility. Yes. So it was given by Von Neumann Morgenstern. So two people, एक हैं John Von, please write the spelling correctly, Neumann, and दूसरे हैं Oscar Morgenstern. ठीक है, दे इंट्रोड्यूस्ड ये जो भी अनसर्टेनिटी के अंडर हम एक्सपेक्टेड यूटिलिटी फंक्शंस पढ़ते हैं, इट वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाय देम. एंड एक्चुअली इफ यू लुक इनटू बुक्स, हम उनको बोलते भी VNM यूटिलिटी फंक्शन. वी कॉल देम एज VNM यूटिलिटी फंक्शन. यस यस, कार्डिनल इज ऑलवेज बिफोर ऑर्डिनल. ठीक है, so this is the first thing that happened. And इसके बाद one last thing which you can write, it is called as prospect theory. ये भी अनसर्टेनिटी में ही आता है, द प्रोस्पेक्ट थ्योरी, जो बाउंडेड रैशनैलिटी के बारे में बात करता है. एंड दिस प्रोस्पेक्ट थ्योरी, दिस वाज गिवन बाय, अगेन राइट द स्पेलिंग वेरी केयरफुली, KAHNEMAN, right? And TVERSKY. Kahneman and Tversky in 1979. इन्होंने ये प्रोस्पेक्ट थ्योरी के बारे में बात की. दिस इज रिलेटेड टू बाउंडेड रैशनैलिटी. ठीक है, so this is the chronology of utility. Okay, I hope all of you have made a note of this. So basically utility can be divided in 4-5 phases. Cardinal, then ordinal, then what about revealed preference, what about modern economics? We can divide them, और हर एक के अंदर किस किस का contribution रहा है, you can just think about it. ठीक है, okay, I hope this is done. We'll come back to this now. ठीक है, so because Marshall and Hicks and Allen were the people जिन्होंने इसको बुक में लिखा था, who wrote them in book, you will always notice that these are related to, I mean, जब भी आप नाम पढ़ोगे इनका, आपको हमेशा दिखेगा कि you will always see Marshall and Hicks and Allen, और किसी का नाम you will never find out. Okay, ठीक है, anything, anyone? This was before Hendrik. But the concept is different, na? I mean, Hendrik was related to revealed, So ये modern utility concepts हैं, right? So the the portfolio kind of thing, जिसमें which you will put under the category of these people, it will be modern utility. Okay, so we'll write it down here itself. Right. So again, books are again very important. So I'll write few of them जो यहाँ पे important है. But you make a list of the all authors, economic related with their books. तो यहाँ पर Hicks and Allen, a reconsideration of the theory of value. ठीक है. Similarly, you can also write for Newman and Morgenstern. So write down theory of games and economic behavior. Theory of games and economic behavior. Anything else, anyone? How to get notes on portal? I have uploaded them, no? कल ही तो upload हो गए. Today I will upload them again. Just after the lecture, you should be able to see the notes. Okay. So we'll go. ठीक है, अब देखो, let's see. तो सबसे पहले we need to see marginal utility analysis. इसमें you do the definition of total utility and marginal utility. Total utility is sum of marginal utility. Marginal utility is difference of total utility. ठीक है. तो अगर by consuming n units, my total utility is 100 and n minus 1 units, my total utility is 90. तो nth unit का marginal utility will be 10. इसी को अगर हम हमारे डिफरेंशिएशन में लिखें तो marginal utility is how total utility changes as we change the consumption of any commodity. Whenever we change the consumption of commodity, change in total utility is called as marginal utility. तो एग्जाम में you may be asked answer these two questions, First, does this have positive marginal utility? Second, does it obey law of diminishing marginal utility? Does this have पॉजिटिव मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी? माने हमें चेक करना है कि क्या मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी ग्रेटर देन 0 है या नहीं है. माने वी नीड टू चेक दैट हाउ यूटिलिटी चेंजेस एज एक्स चेंजेस. क्या ये ग्रेटर देन 0 है? एज यूटिलिटी, हाउ यूटिलिटी चेंजेस एज वाई चेंजेस, क्या ये ग्रेटर देन जीरो है? ये हमें चेक करना है। ठीक है, ये हो गया कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ पॉजिटिव मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी, ये पहला चीज है। डज इट ओबे लॉ ऑफ डिमिनिशिंग मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी? तो इसमें स्टेप्स इन्वॉल्व विल बी टू। फर्स्ट यू विल फाइंड मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी, second you will check how marginal utility changes as x changes। तो अगर हम इन दोनों कॉन्सेप्ट्स को क्लब करें, मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी माने हाउ यूटिलिटी चेंजेस एज एक्स चेंजेस, तो इफ आई रिप्लेस इट हियर तो क्या आ जाएगा? आई गेट डबल डेरिवेटिव। सो टू चेक इफ मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी इज डिमिनिशिंग और नॉट, क्या मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी डिक्लाइन हो रही है, यू विल चेक सेकेंड ऑर्डर डेरिवेटिव। If this is less than 0, then diminishing. And to check if marginal utility is positive or not, आप simply marginal utility निकालोगे. You'll simply find marginal utility and check if it is greater than 0 or not. So please understand the difference between the two. Positive है या negative है, उसके लिए you'll only do first order derivative. Diminishing marginal utility है या नहीं, you'll do second order derivative of utility function. ठीक है? Okay. John Nash gave the theory of games. Yes, that's right. You're right. That's why Nash equilibrium. Correct. Portal means the portal on which all courses, just people who have access to courses. That's the portal. ठीक है, तो ये हो गया. Assumptions you do it on your own. I don't have to do the assumptions with you. अब हम बात करते हैं लॉ की. ये लॉ है लॉ ऑफ डिमिनिशिंग मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी. What does this law states? This law states that as you increase consumption of a commodity, the extra utility you get keeps declining. इसका ग्राफ हमारा ऐसा बन जाता है that as consumption of commodity increases, marginal utility decreases. ठीक है, marginal utility of the commodity decreases. ओके, ये लॉ इंपॉर्टेंट है, प्लीज डू दिस लॉ. अब हम इस पे आ जाते हैं, द रिलेशन बिटवीन टोटल यूटिलिटी एंड मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी. एंड इस रिलेशन को वी कैन स्टडी इन 3 phases. बेटा दिस इज फेज 1. देखो फेज 1 में इफ यू नोटिस, ऑल्दो मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी डिक्लाइन तो कर रहा है. पहला यूनिट से मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी 10 है, सेकेंड यूनिट से 8 है, थर्ड से 6 है, फोर्थ से 4 है. सो मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी इज डिक्लाइनिंग but positive है from first 10, from second 8, third 6, so it's positive. So जब तक marginal utility positive है, you notice total utility is increasing. Then when marginal utility is 0, right, what was marginal utility? It was differentiation of total utility. तो अगर हम किसी भी चीज को डिफरेंशिएट करके इक्वल टू 0 प्लग इन करते हैं, व्हाट डज इट मीन? वी मीन दैट इधर हम मैक्सिमा निकाल रहे हैं या मिनिमा, क्योंकि दिस इज द फर्स्ट ऑर्डर कंडीशन. डिफरेंशिएट इक्वल टू 0, इधर मैक्सिमा या मिनिमा. सो व्हेन वी डिफरेंशिएट दिस एंड व्हेन वी इक्वेट इट टू 0, इसका मतलब ये हो गया दैट डेफिनेटली टोटल यूटिलिटी का या मैक्सिमा होगा या मिनिमा. इन दिस केस वी अचीव द मैक्सिमा ऑफ टोटल यूटिलिटी. And then when marginal utility is negative, the total utility will fall. So this is the relationship. Limitations you can do. Now let's talk about the case of single commodity. So so 2 cases we have to understand. The first is single commodity case. And the second is 2 commodity case. Single commodity case में our equilibrium condition is MUX by PX is equal to MUM. MUM क्या है? MUM है marginal utility of money. माने when we spend 1 extra rupee, तो extra satisfaction कितना मिलता है? How much is the extra satisfaction we get by spending extra rupee? That is called as marginal utility of money. And ये है marginal utility of commodity divided by the price of commodity. ठीक है? So single commodity equilibrium states that wherever these two will be equal, that will be your equilibrium. Okay, so this is your first law that we have, right? That mu x by px should be equal to mu m. Okay, now suppose if I assume that mu m is 1, so I can plug 1 here, and अगर मैं इसको 1 plug करूंगी, I'll get mu x by px equal to 1. So I will get mu x equal to px. Okay. We know mu x is declining, diminishing marginal utility. Suppose px, क्योंकि प्राइस है वो हमें मार्केट से गिवन है, सो सपोज px is some value, कांस्टेंट है, राइट? सो wherever these two become equal, ये मेरा इक्विलिब्रियम कंजम्पशन हो जाएगा. दिस इज वेयर आई कैन फाइंड माई इक्विलिब्रियम कंजम्पशन. ठीक है? ओके, then you can read this. Now we talk about consumer surplus. Now consumer surplus का concept ये बोलता है that the area above price below demand curve is consumer surplus. यही था, area above price below demand curve is consumer surplus. But we can also go ahead and we can also find out consumer surplus in from marginal utility curve. ठीक है? तो क्योंकि हम ये सोच सकते हैं that whatever amount we demand is equivalent to the additional utility we are getting from the commodity. We can take them more or less close कि जब तक मेरे को यूटिलिटी पॉजिटिव मिल रहा होगा एक्स्ट्रा, आई विल डिमांड द कमोडिटी, और अगर उससे यूटिलिटी जीरो हो जाएगा या नेगेटिव होगा, आई विल नॉट डिमांड द कमोडिटी. सो वी कैन थिंक दैट द मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी of a commodity very closely represents the demand of the commodity. ठीक है? और if I go ahead and I write the px here, right, तो we can say that this area, ये जो एरिया आ रहा है, ये हमारा कंज्यूमर सरप्लस हो जाएगा. सो एरिया अबव प्राइस बिलो मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी कर्व, दैट इज ऑल्सो कंज्यूमर सरप्लस. इसको भी हम कंज्यूमर सरप्लस बोल सकते हैं. वी कैन ऑल्सो कॉल दिस एज कंज्यूमर सरप्लस. Sometimes they may ask you in exam कि find how to find consumer surplus from marginal utility curve. ठीक है? अच्छा, suppose I tell you marginal utility curve is 10 minus x. Price of the commodity is 5. Find consumer surplus. ठीक है, just give it a try. करो, सोचो एक बारी कैसे होगा. How will you find consumer surplus in this case? I am yet to take the concept of consumer surplus. I mean, today we are just doing the concept of consumer equilibrium. उसमें by chance consumer surplus has come into picture. We'll take that separately. Yes. So basically, because so when will you demand a commodity? कब तक commodity का demand होगा? as long as the utility we get from commodity is positive, तभी हम डिमांड करेंगे. सो इफ आई गो बैक टू दिस कर्व, हाँ, मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी वाले अगर कर्व पे जाते हैं, so we will demand the commodity. First unit will be demanded because its extra utility is positive. Second unit will be demanded because its extra utility is positive. So in a way, this is also telling me how much I will demand, right? And when will I demand? So in a way, this also represents my willingness to buy a commodity. इसलिए we are taking them to be equivalent. That is how Marshall took them to be equivalent. 12.5. ठीक है, एक बार देख लेते हैं. लेट्स सी दिस. तो अगर हम मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी वाले कर्व को प्लॉट करते हैं, इफ वी प्लॉट दिस, हाउ विल वी गेट दिस बेटा? 10 minus x माने you will have 10 here. सो ये x है ना. देखो, when x is 0, अगर मैं x को 0 प्लग करती हूँ, I get 10 here. Put 0 here, 10 आ जाएगा. ठीक है. अच्छा, px is 5. तो ये इक्विलिब्रियम क्वांटिटी कितना होगा? When mux equal to px. So 10 minus x equal to 5. So x will be 5. Now what is consumer surplus? This area. So you find the area of this triangle. So half base height. This will be 12.5. Correct. All of you are correct. It will be 12.5. That's right. Any doubt in this? Anyone?